Last time that we were talking about stuff in modern India, we talked about kind of where India was, and we also talked about some of their inventions as well as some of the invasions into the area. Let's start off by talking about the Taj Mahal, which is one of the most famous buildings in India. Go ahead and make a bullet and write down Taj Mahal. So, bullet Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is the building that's down here in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can see the Taj Mahal. Behind the Taj Mahal is a river, so there's a river behind it. The Taj Mahal was constructed by Shah Jahan. Go make a one and write down Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal. So one, Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal. So Shah Jahan is the person who built the Taj Mahal. It took about 20,000 workers and 22 years to construct the Taj Mahal. Now, Shah Jahan did want two Taj Mahals. He wanted one Taj Mahal here, and then the opposite side, he wanted the black one. But they kind of ran out of money, so they only built the one. What was the Taj Mahal? Why was it constructed for? Well, it was constructed as a tomb for his favorite wife who had died during childbirth. Shah Jahan had three wives, but his favorite one died, so he had this built for her. Go ahead and make a two, and then write down tomb of his favorite wife. So tomb of his favorite wife. So his favorite wife died, and then he had the Taj Mahal constructed for her. And the Taj Mahal is symmetrical. That means everything on the right-hand side is the same as everything on the left-hand side. So you kind of see these little lines going right through there. That divides the building in half. All right, and the right half is the same as the left half. So symmetrical, kind of like a mirror, same as when you look in a mirror. So it's kind of mirrored across, symmetrical. Go ahead and make a new bullet and write down discovery of a water route to India. So new bullet, discovery of a water route to India. Now, there are multiple people that were trying to find a way to get from Europe over to India by water. Now, obviously, you could walk there across land. We talk about how Marco Polo went over to China. So, obviously, you could get there by land. But there were people that were trying to find a water route because, a boat can float and there aren't any trees in the water. So, it's just easier to kind of move a long distance on water from one place to another. Now, the person you're most familiar with who was trying to find a all-water route to India was Christopher Columbus. Go ahead and make a number one, or write down Columbus tries to find India in 1492. So one, Columbus tries to find India in 1492. Now, Columbus believed the world was round and that he could sail around the world and get over to India. However, there is a massive land mass somewhat in the way in both North and South America, preventing him from doing so. So he only ever got over to the Caribbean islands and then was never able to, get past them because there's only one way around North and South America, and that's to go all the way to the south, around South America, and then go over. You can see how he took 4 voyages over there, and on his last voyage, the Orange Line, you can see how he kind of ran right up against the Yucatan Peninsula, and then he was clearly looking for a way to get through to Central America before he turned around and head back. Now, there's other people that also knew about the world being round as well. So Christopher Columbus wasn't the only person that believed the world was round. There are about people that believed the world was round this time period, and there are some people that are pretty good at even knowing kind of how big the world was around. So, for example, there was a guy in Egypt who took a stick at noon, put it down on the ground, measured its shadow, then went north of Egypt to an island. He knew the distance between the place in Egypt that he was and the island. And then he took a stick, put it down again at noon on the island, measured its shadow. And the shadow difference between those two locations told him how big the world was around. And he was only off by like a couple hundred miles. So there are people even this time period that with the science that they had and the mathematics they had that kind of was able to figure it out. All right. Number 2. Now, eventually, there is a person who figures out a water route to India. And the person who does that does it 6 years after Columbus's failed attempt in 1492 and his 3 other attempts. In 1498, it's Vasco de Gama who finds the first all-water route to India. Go ahead and make it 2. 1498, Vasco de Gama. What was happening was that people, if they wanted to get over to India by boat, what they had to do was go for the Mediterranean Sea, and then you could kind of get through this way a bit. You could kind of trade and so forth. It was kind of a pain, but you could kind of get through and then pop out over here. And the only problem is that this territory over here was kind of controlled by the Turks and the Mamluks. Sorry, the Mamluks controlled it at this time period. And that was a bit of a problem because Europeans really couldn't go through that area. There was conflicts between the two groups and so forth. So they were trying to. So the way that Vasco da Gama found the way around was by going all the way around Africa and then getting over to India that way. All right. So yeah, they knew that there was water over here because they had, people had gone through this area, but they just didn't know about this area. And Vasco da Gama is kind of the guy that finds out about that area. So that's number 2. So he kind of finds that route there. And then Europeans get more and more into India going around this way. New bullet, British rule. New bullet, British rule. So we talked about before about how the East India Company had taken over in India in the 1700s. There's that big Seppo rebellion that ends up happening, and then the East India Company ends up leaving power, and the British government takes over direct command or direct control of India. And they'll be in direct control of India from 1858 to 1947. In 1947, that is when India gains its independence. We're going to write down end of the British rule on August 15th, 1947. So number 1, ended the British rule on August 15th, 1947. So British rule does come to an end in 1947 when India gains independence. How does India gain its independence? Well, after World War II, the British government is pretty beat up from fighting against the Germans, and they end up just giving India its independence because they have really no way at that point in time of financially being able to afford to put down a rebellion. Now, one of the main people that ends up leading this independence movement is Gandhi. So Gandhi is kind of the main pusher for the nonviolence movement. Go ahead and make it 2 and write down Gandhi's nonviolence movement for freedom. So 2, Gandhi's nonviolence movement for freedom. So Gandhi is kind of the main pusher for nonviolence in India and protesting nonviolently for your ideas. Okay, we had talked about before about how Gandhi had gotten kicked off a train, for example, because he refused to move from his first class seat that he was in just because he was Indian and because he had somewhat bought the ticket, So Gandhi was doing a lot of nonviolent stuff. He was also pretty good at trying to enforce nonviolence among the people who were also in his groups. So people were committing violence in protests that he was involved with, and he would go on a hunger strike until people stopped, so forth and so on. So he always tried to do a good job of trying to keep people in line and such. All right, make a 3. And then 3, we're going to write down at independence, the British partitioned India into India and Pakistan. So number 3, at independence, the British partitioned India into India and Pakistan. So when Britain gave India its independence, they split India into 2 countries. One, a Muslim majority area of Pakistan, which was here in the green, and the other one being the Hindu Buddhist majority here in red. Now you also see some areas here like Hyderabad, for example, which was kind of independent, but then incorporated in India in 1498. Gayo here was owned by the Portuguese and eventually gets incorporated in India in 1961. East Bangladesh, this is nowadays, East Pakistan, which is nowadays Bangladesh. That gained its independence from Pakistan in 1971. So Bangladesh formed their own government in that year. This area over here, Kashmir, that's in gray, is still disputed between India and Pakistan about who owns it. And that's caused several issues between the 2 nations about who owns the territory. And there's been some military conflicts, minor military conflicts between Pakistan and India over Kashmir. Nothing that's resulted in war, but there have been several conflicts over it. All these arrows right here just means people that were Muslim that were trying to get to the Muslim majority Pakistan, or people that were Hindu or Buddhist trying to get over to the um, Hindu and Buddhist majority India area, as well as Sikhs. Sikhs kind of live up in this northern area here, so they're also trying to get back into an area that wasn't controlled by Muslims, because we talked about before about how the Sikhs had fought against the Muslims because they did not want them to gain control of India or the areas that they lived in. All right, let's go and stop there for today.